Thank you everybody for joining us today for our industry update. Again, as I had said, please make sure to mute your lines and use the chat feature only, and we will address all questions at the end. Today, we welcome Sean Kennedy to our update, and we'll have John and Melissa presenting after Sean. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to you, to John, to kick us off. And thank you all again for joining us.
Thank you, Hope. And again, thanks to all who are on the call today. Really appreciate you being here. And I personally appreciate the fact that Melissa Bova is back from vacation so that she'll be able to make this much more enjoyable this week than I could ever do in her absence. As a reminder, this session today is designed for our hotel, restaurant, and travel and tourism partners and is off the record. So if you're with the press, please disconnect. As always, we entertain any and all press interviews, and we do a lot of those, as you all well know, but this is not the time for that. This is off the record. As Hope mentioned, we're very excited today to have with us from one of our national partners, the National Restaurant Association, Sean Kennedy. Sean is the Executive Vice President of Public Affairs with the National Restaurant Association and has been doing a phenomenal job trying to do everything that can be done at the federal level to help our industry through this terrible crisis. We've gotten to know Sean very well since he joined the National Restaurant Association not all that long ago. He's a terrific leader, great person, and we're really fortunate to be his partner. Sean, thanks for taking the time to visit with our folks today about what's going on in Washington. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Morning, John. Happy to. Thanks for having me today. When we last spoke, Congress, Republicans and Democrats were unable to find agreement on a fourth coronavirus relief bill. Republicans were looking for a $1 trillion bill. Democrats were looking for a $3 trillion bill. There was no ability to meet in the middle from either side. And Republicans then said, well, let's do this in piecemeal. Let's deal with the UI issue, then we can deal with the PPP issue, then we can deal with state and local. Democrats said, no, we want to do this all in one. I really didn't think that they would walk away from it before the August recess, but that's sort of the level of partisanship that we've gotten right now. What's changed? A few things have changed over the last 72 hours, so this is sort of it's a timely opportunity for you all. This Postal Service issue has really gotten, as you know, a lot of attention. Democrats are very focused on it. Nancy Pelosi is convening a rare Saturday session of the House of Representatives to vote on a $25 billion package. She's taking the package that she is doing what she said she didn't want to do, which is to do a standalone piece of legislation and not deal with everything else. So she's going to bring the House in to pass that. It'll pass presumably. I think a lot of Republicans will vote for it as well. Majority Leader McConnell said he has no interest in bringing it up in the Senate. The Republicans have responded in the Senate by saying, well, if you're going to come in and start doing standalone bills, then let's talk about a skinny, and by that I mean narrow, coronavirus relief bill. So they yesterday, Senate Republicans introduced a sort of new, as I said, skinny coronavirus relief bill that has two components that are relevant for us. One is a continuation of the federal unemployment insurance benefit. It was $600 before it expired. It is now going to be $300 under the Republican plan, continuing through the end of the year. Unlike the president's executive order, it does not require a pay-in or a buy-in at the state level. The Trump executive order did $300, but required states to put up 25% of the money, and a lot of states just don't have the ability to do that. So the Senate Republican plan would address that. It also, we've discussed this before, does create a second round of PPP. Which raises one issue that we've been working really closely with John and Melissa and you all on, which is the eligibility of restaurants to participate. The second round of PPP would be very similar to the first round. It's still based on 8 weeks. To be eligible, the original plan said you had to demonstrate 50% total revenue loss year on year for the second quarter of 2020 versus 2019. We did, our economists did some calculations based on that and concluded that 45% of restaurants wouldn't qualify for that. We operate on such tight profit margins that by the time you're up to 50% profit loss, or excuse me, margin, gross revenue loss, a lot of restaurants are long gone by that point. So we need it to be lower. We started a grassroots campaign about 2 weeks ago rather, calling for exactly that. We got good turnout. Appreciate everything that John did in banging the drum and working with us, and appreciate everything you all did as far as going to Restaurants Act or working through PRLA's sites and making sure that that was noted. The Republican plan that came out yesterday lowers the threshold to 35%, which is significant. We would like it to be 20%. So we are pleased that it's gone down 15 points. We're going to do what we can to bring it down that additional 15, but it's a great step forward. That plan is going to be, I don't know if the plan is going to be voted on this weekend or not. It's unclear what Senator McConnell is doing about it. I think this is more of a message bill. So where does this leave us moving forward? Congress will come, the Democratic convention is this week. The Republican convention is next week. You have the Labor Day holiday, and then Congress comes back in September. Congress has got the month of September now to accomplish two things. One, to do a fourth coronavirus relief bill, if a deal can be cut. And the second is the government's fiscal year ends at the end of September. So we always have this brinksmanship here in Washington where will the government shut down? Will museums be shut down? All those things. That has to happen as well. So Congress is really setting themselves up for quite the cliffhanger that they need to get both done. They really want to leave as quickly as they can after October and campaign like hell for their own seats, for the White House, etc. We are still optimistic that a deal is going to be cut on a fourth coronavirus relief bill. There are three approaches that Congress can take, sort of a good, better, best. I'll start at the top. Best would be passage of the Senate version of the Restaurants Act, $120 billion aimed at units, at operators of 20 units or less, irrespective of your business model. That's our number one priority. It's on number one item on the blueprint. The second, the better, would be passage of something like Restart. We haven't talked a lot about Restart, but Restart is a program, it's bipartisan. Think of it as PPP on steroids. Larger loan amount, much more generous application for what you can spend it on. It's much more aimed at operating expenses and not just the payroll. And larger, small and mid-sized businesses could be eligible to participate in that as well. And then good would be a second round of PPP. Right now, all signals are pointing to, we're pushing for best. We're working with John from the Pennsylvania delegation on that front. Every signal we've gotten right now suggests that it's going to be closer to good. The notion of if Congress is debating between a $1 trillion and a $3 trillion bill, it's probably going to come out to $2 trillion. There's the numbers to put things in perspective. Restaurants Act is $120 billion. The amount of money that Congress is talking about giving to schools so that they can either open on time or they can transition more effectively to distance learning is $115 billion. So Congress is unlikely to pass a industry-specific fund of that much money in this bill. We're going to push to do more than PPP, and we want to make sure that we can that we've got every aspect in there. But that's where Congress is telling us. That's where congressional leaders are telling us. I'll throw in one more item, which is at this point, every expectation is that for that second round of PPP, the carve out that the restaurant and lodging industry secured for us that allows the employee count to be based on per location and not the aggregate is going to be in this second round. That was a really hard fought win for us the first time. To be honest, everybody in this town wants the same deal that hotels and restaurants were able to secure. Congress is being besieged by every other franchise entity. So it's gyms, it's nail salons, it's pet food stores, you name it. They're resisting that, but they are keeping this in there for us. That's sort of it. If you haven't seen our blueprint for revival, which is something that the PRLA and the National Restaurant Association put out together, please check out our website at restaurantsact.com. If you're not on our distribution list, both when we do grassroots updates as well as we're trying just to offer more ongoing updates just to keep you all educated. But John's been really great about folding our updates into his products as well. So you've got a one-stop shop of John of everything state and federal. But if you haven't been on restaurantsact.com, do so. Check out the blueprint, because what we want to demonstrate to policymakers is that the needs of this industry are, it's more than just recovery. We've got so many issues. We have to figure out what we're going to do about testing. We need to do what we can to get more consumer confidence to come into restaurants. We need to do more as far as when a vaccine is discovered, is created, who should it be distributed to, and where should restaurants as a critical part of the food supply chain fit into that? And then last is we have a growing risk of at-risk communities that need help, and the restaurant industry needs to be a part of that. All of that is in the, I won't go through what's in the blueprint, but it's all laid out in there. I hope you'll check it out. But we really appreciate your time and attention today. Everybody is so sort of fatigued, and John and I will do these updates and say, you need to be hammering Congress right now. And that's our day jobs. That's not your day job. We really only do this when we think it's really necessary. This is that point. Congress is going to do one piece of legislation. It's going to be, and that's going to be it. And it'll be it probably until they reconvene in January. I'll stop talking. I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions, John, from you or your members. But thanks for your partnership and your continued support.
Thank you, Sean. Ben Fletcher just put up the link to the
Thanks.
blueprint for revival, and it is linked on our daily update, so you probably have already seen it there. So please check that out, as Sean mentioned. We really appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, but we do have time for a few questions. I haven't seen any pop up yet, but if anybody has any questions specific to Sean, please put them up there now. And also, let me say, Sean, as I've reiterated many times over, we really appreciate the great spirit of partnership, and you, not just you, but your entire team at the National Restaurant Association are doing a terrific job. We could not thank you enough. For our hotel partners that are on today, I'd like to mention that most of you have restaurants, so you're very interested in what happens at the National Restaurant Association. We will also have, in one of the future updates, Sean's counterpart from the HNLA. Sean works very closely with them on a daily basis anyway.
Yeah.
And then, of course, for our travel and tourism partners, we're still doing the weekly Destination Marketing Organization call. It's every week at 9 a.m., where we get updates on what's happening in Pennsylvania travel and tourism at that time. It looks like there is a question from Bob Raffetta. It says, what are the odds of a December Christmas gift stimulus package, small but something?
It's possible. It's what Congress does in there, they call it a lame duck session. So it's that period of time when the White House, let's assume, if there are changes to Congress, they won't have been implemented by then. So if there's a power switch in the Senate, it'll still be under Republican control. If there's obviously a power switch in the White House, it'll still be under Republican control. Lame duck sessions are possible. Whether there's going to be a Christmas gift of $120 billion we're asking for it, but we are getting a lot of resistance. I think that personally, something like Restart has a lot more legs right now. It's something that's going to affect the wide range of businesses. But the point that we can make that's most compelling, we are still the poster children, so to speak, for the face of what this pandemic has meant for small businesses. There are a lot of, and I'm including my hotel friends, and HLA is great. I talk to Brian Crawford, as I'm sure John does, frequently. And so a fantastic organization. They're doing great stuff. But we are the faces of this, the hotel and restaurant industry. And there really needs to be a specific solution that recognizes that. On the restaurant side, we've lost more jobs and more revenue than any other industry in the country. And we're the second largest private sector employer. So that needs to be an alarm bell in Washington. We've been ringing it. We're trying to ring it even louder. Whether it's really hard to tell even if they're going to get a deal done in September. So it's really hard for me to predict what's going to happen in December at this point. But as we get closer to that period, I'm happy to come back, John, if you'll have me, and give an update for your members.
Of course. One other question, which I think there's two that are basically the same question, so I'll read the most recent one. If I'm hearing you correctly, you believe there could be a $2 trillion stimulus in early September, or are you hearing yet during the conventions?
I don't think talks are going to happen. I mean, I was actually on a call with, my CEO was on a call with Secretary Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin yesterday morning. And we asked him about this, about just the state of talks. He was so negative as to where he thinks things are. No talks are scheduled between Democrats and Republicans here in Washington. So I don't see anything happening this month. I don't think it's until Congress formally comes back into session after Labor Day that you could see a $1 trillion, $2 trillion, $3 trillion COVID relief stimulus bill. Unlikely in August.
And there are odds that it could happen before the election then, correct?
I think that I think that if they are going to, they can't leave town without addressing these issues. And I know I don't know if I'm just being Pollyannish. I still think that the dysfunction, that they're going to have to come together to recognize this. Unemployment is not where it needs to be. Restaurant traffic is not where it needs to be. Hotels are not where they need to be. So we need, at a minimum, something like a second round of PPP. There's bipartisan agreement on that. Where they're getting hung up on is the issues that are larger than us. They agree on the need for PPP. They agree on the need for a second round of UI. They don't agree on much more than that. And that's really where things are getting wrapped around the axle.
Okay. Sean, I think that's it for today. And I really, really appreciate you being here. Keep up the great work. And as usual, call on us anytime. We keep getting the legislative alerts out as quick as you get them to us.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. See you guys. I'm going to drop off.
Okay. Melissa, it's all yours. Thanks, Sean.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm back. Just to let you all know, last week, Wednesday at 11 a.m., I poured myself a large glass of wine and laid in front of the ocean while John took over the webinar. So it was a very relaxing time for me. I did that purposefully for obvious reasons. A few updates, and of course, as John is aware, usually when I come back from vacation, I end up taking on more tasks than any normal person would. So we have a lot of updates on action items and things that you all can start doing. I've talked in the past about some of our state priorities and when you need to activate, and we're reaching to that time. So let me provide you a little bit of where we are. Over the last 2 weeks, yes, sometimes even I work on vacation. We've been communicating with the legislature because they are returning to session next month. The Senate returns on September 8th. The House returns September 15th, and we are being extremely proactive in putting together that package of bills that we've discussed in the past to start moving immediately to help the industry. So we have been talking with leadership in the House and Senate. We've been talking to some of our sponsors of legislation in the House and Senate, and I will talk about some changes on that front. And we've been lining up our efforts to really move bills and push the needle in terms of things that our industry needs. Now, I want to, before I get into the priorities, some of these items are specific to restaurants, and quite frankly, that is just because of restaurants and our event venues having been so targeted by the governor's latest mitigation efforts. So some, you might think, why isn't this more inclusive of the broader tourism industry, of hotels, if you don't have a restaurant or event space? But it really is because some of these packages are moving so quickly, and hopefully quickly, because of the recognition of the governor's mitigation order and just the ridiculousness of that entire situation. So some of our priorities that I've talked about in the past, but I want to update a little bit now. Since we've talked, we now have legislation filed for every single one of our priorities, or a co-sponsorship memo circulated, or legislation is being drafted. So when you also have a list of recovery priorities that we needed before, we have since taken a step forward, and we actually have sponsors and things to talk about. So we're no longer talking concepts of, we need a grant to help restaurants get through it, or we need to increase capacity above 25 people for an event. We actually have legislation that we can cite and say that this is what we, PRLA, is supporting at this moment in time. I do want to caveat, if you are a political nerd and you're following bills and you're talking to your legislators, there are a ton of bills out there right now to help the industry, and they're all great. And I love love that all of a sudden the legislature is behind the restaurant industry and hospitality industry, as I like to think they were all along. Maybe they always weren't. I think that's great. But to be honest, and I've been honest with all of you in the past, there are some bills out there that are great, love them. They're never going to move. And I and PRLA and our committees and John really have a laser focus of what pieces of legislation do we think we can actually get across the finish line. That isn't us just asking for the sun and the moon and the stars and everybody throwing up their hands and saying no thank you. So some of the bills that have been filed, some of them I won't spend too much time on, but I do have a few updates as well. General business bills, we still have our $250 million grant program. House Bill 2615, sponsored by Representative Stevens. That is specific to restaurants right now. We do have another bill that is for DMOs. We are looking at legislation for hotels. I'm going to get back to the headache we might have in terms of that $250 million grant program when I talk about the potential impact of federal. But that bill is out there. We have 3 bills right now that deal with, and this is for my event people, so make sure you're paying attention, that would change the capacity limits that the governor has put in place. One has already passed the House. You're very familiar with it, House Bill 2513, sponsored by Representative Everett, says 50% needs to be indoor capacity. We have a co-sponsorship memo and a bill being drafted by Senator Stefano that says social distancing and barriers and is all that COVID knows. So it would allow that to be the basis of reopening. Plus it would allow for bar seating to again be permissible. And a companion bill to that, if you read it in the news yesterday, Representative Dowling, also from Fayette County, has introduced a bill, or is introducing a bill that would allow all of our events to be at 50% capacity indoors. So that 25-person rule would go poof. Those are, I mean, essentially the crux of what we know we need for our industry right now. So those have been introduced. We have our interest-free loan option bill is being drafted now. We have another bill that would, if you haven't been able to pay your sales tax, would give you until the end of the year to play catch up without any penalties and fees. Liability protection. If there is anybody on this webinar who is not concerned about liability as it relates to COVID, you probably should get off the webinar, because this is our top priority. And that bill, Senate Bill 1239, has been introduced. For my licensees, and all of this is going to be shared with you, so I promise I'm going to get to all of this. License renewal fees is being introduced for our licensees. Elimination of safekeeping fees for those of you that might have a license in safekeeping, because who's opening a restaurant right now? Increasing the licensee discount to 15% for 1 year. Years for my longtime members. How many years have we been asking for an increase in the licensee discount, and all we need was COVID to get that? What fun. Delivery of wine and mixed drinks. You can deliver beer. You can't deliver wine and mixed drinks. It is a stupid technical issue in the liquor code, and that's one of our priorities. And then for my friends in Pittsburgh and in areas where you just don't have the ability to expand your outdoor seating or get creative in that space, we have legislation that would, one, allow you to go to a non-contiguous part as long as it's within 1,000 feet of your property. So let's say there is a parking lot 2 doors down that you could use, but you can't because it's not contiguous. This would allow for that. 2, let's say there is a park down the street and you would like to use an off-premise catering permit to provide food and beverage there for people, but you're stuck to 5 hours and you can only have 52 permits a year. This would eliminate all of that during COVID. So that's a general gist of the legislation and PRLA's priority packages. So we have now taken another step forward, and I'm going to talk to you about the next step forward in a minute. So plugging along. So you guys thought I was just phoning it in on vacation. Isn't this fun? The only thing I want to touch upon is the potential impact of federal changes on our priorities. And Sean, I wanted to make him mention it, but he didn't, so I'll be the one to mention it. And I think I've mentioned it on a few webinars in the past. Part of the federal package, the Republicans are very against providing more funding to state and cities and counties as part of the next federal package. And the compromise that they are throwing out there is to use any unspent CARES Act money that the state has received for whatever they want. Currently, it has to be specific to COVID. So for our grant program, recovery package specific to COVID. For our DMO grant program, recovery package because they've been impacted by COVID. The thought is that a federal bill might allow them to open up that spending to anything they want. And when you have a legislature that is looking at a multi-billion-dollar deficit and needs to fill that deficit and is going into an election year and doesn't want to raise taxes, my concern is that all of that grant money that we think that we can capture is going to be harder to get if that happens. So we are pushing forward in terms of a grant program. It is obviously on our list of priorities, but I want to be realistic in terms of us being able to get it depending on how the federal conversations continue. And I stopped talking about bill numbers. I'm getting there. All of this is going to be provided to you. I've already written it all down, and cheat sheets are going to be made available. Next steps. I always like to give you all action items, and we've had a lot of internal conversations. There are a lot of restaurants and smaller restaurant groups and more regional groups that are getting together, and John and PRLA leadership and I have been having a lot of conversations of how can you feel like you're doing more and you're pushing something. And I know that's been frustrating, but for me, standing in a group of 500 people making the governor angry because we're over 250 and saying life isn't fair is great for PR. It doesn't move the needle, which is why we've really waited until we had this package of bills, until we could go to legislators and say, this is what we need. This is what needs to happen. So, and now you all are going to have to clear your schedule. We have set up regional roundtables with legislators. They're all via Zoom, so you can do it in your pajamas, just put on a nice shirt. And it's basically the roundtables PRLA has had in the past if you participated before, and I'm going to go over what that will consist of, because for those of you who've done it in the past, I make it as easy as possible. But essentially, we're going to be inviting legislators from every region to come onto a Zoom call with PRLA members, and you can talk about, one, the impact this has had on you. We can go back to March, we can talk about July, talk about how it has changed your business, talk about what keeps you up at night, talk about what you need to get through this. And this is all going to happen, as you can see, over the next 2 weeks. And I was very specific in that because the Senate comes back September 8th. I want to touch every single legislator within the legislature before they return to session. And I want them to know these are the bills that PRLA needs to get through all of this. So you can see on here, everything scheduled. Northwest, my Erie folks, I need you guys to give us a date. That's the only one we haven't scheduled yet, but you can see on here where these roundtables are going to be held. I suggest if you want to participate, and I need you to participate, that you do register early. It doesn't help me or the communication with the legislature if I have 200 people. So we might have to limit attendance. So it's going to be really key that if you are available, that you register soon. So for those of you who don't have PRLA's chapter map memorized, I don't know why you don't, we are providing you the chapter map, and we can go back and forth. But this shows you what chapter that you're in. And this is important because the delegations that I invite are going to be the legislators from those counties. So if you are in the Lehigh Valley, I'm going to be inviting legislators that are predominantly in Northampton and Lehigh County. So those are going to be invited to that roundtable. So you can see where you would fall as a business. I'm sending invites today to all of the legislatures, so don't ask me who's coming yet because I haven't actually invited them yet. And Zoom, while we love in-person meetings and I love a good roundtable, we are concerned, with the optics of having large groups in person. And I think Zoom, one, encourages more legislators to get involved because they don't have to do so much. And it also makes it easier for all of you to get involved as well. And also Macy has fallen asleep behind me. So clearly my first webinar back is very riveting. So let's go. Why don't we go to, if you picked your chapter, can you go back, Eric, to where the dates are? So if you weren't sure what chapter you're in, thank you, Eric. You're very prompt today. Let me go over some of the things. You do need to register in advance. We need to know who's registered. We will, I make this as easy as possible. Trust me. What will happen is you will register for the webinar. We will provide you all with talking points. And this is for Bob and Julie, everybody asking, these talking points will contain a breakdown of every hints of what you could talk about, ideas of things that you might want to bring up as a business owner, and it lists every single bill that is part of this recovery package and the details of what is in the bill. So we will provide you everything you need. You don't need to, I mean, to be honest, I think everybody on here can certainly jump on a call and talk about the impact of COVID, but we're making sure that you have the background information as well. Second to that, I will be providing legislators with a one-pager. I will also share it with all of you so they can see these are the issues we're talking about. And I want to clarify this, and I'll do it again later when I send it out. There's 2 documents. One is for you to use in these meetings. The second is for legislators. Don't give a legislator your talking points, because it says in the talking points, like, please talk about how the July 15th mitigation order impacted you. That's for you, not for them. So we will have 2 different pieces of collateral, one for you, one for legislators, and that will be provided to everybody ahead of time. So for our first one that's on Tuesday the 25th, my plan is to get all of that collateral to you by Friday, and you will get everything ahead of time. We make it as easy as possible, but there's a few goals that I have here. One, legislators need to see you, and they need to see people from their district, and they need to hear from you about how it's impacted you. 2, every legislator that doesn't respond and say that they're going to be there, we will now know who is too busy to be on a Zoom call with PRLA. Won't hold it against them. But 3, we will be doing a hard ask and asking them to support this total package of bills. We spent a lot of time making sure this is a bipartisan package. There is no reason for Republicans and Democrats not to come together to be on board with all of this. So we're going to be doing that hard ask. And in the past, I've not always liked doing the hard ask, but we are here because this is life or death at this point. This is survival or not survival. So that will all be part of the Zoom calls. John or I will be on every call. We will lead the conversation. We will invite you all to engage. It's not just going to be chat features. We are going to be asking people to speak up. So we're going to have some control there. But this is next step, guys. This is what I've been talking about. We're going to ask you to make phone calls later, but I think right now we need our elected officials to see the face of the industry and to hear about what we need. So that's where we are right now. This is starting next Tuesday. So if you're in the Southern chapter, please start registering now, or any of these chapters. I know registration is open. And no, you do not have to be a PRLA member to attend these roundtables. This is open to everybody. We're continuing as PRLA is we're still here, we're still surviving. And as we'd like, as you're able to become members or consider to become members, because I would like to stick around for a while longer. We certainly understand that everybody is just in a really tough spot right now. So we would love for you to join and consider joining if you're not a member, but any participation in these roundtables is not required. You aren't required to be a member to do so. I think I got this question as well. What if your region is not listed? As you can see, we don't have the entire state active yet. If you are in a region that is not listed, and you can reach out, probably Heidi would be your point of contact there, and she'll put her email up there if you need it. Reach out to Heidi. If you think you can drum up enough businesses in a region to do a roundtable, I'm all in. We'll do a roundtable. Or if you say this region has 8 counties and I really only have connections to 3, we'll do a roundtable for those 3 counties. I'm not picky. Obviously, we're making ourselves available to do this. This is top priority for PRLA right now. So if you are in that area and that's not listed, please reach out to Heidi and we will get something set up there. And then for all of my longtime members who thought we weren't going to have roundtables this year, I thought so too, but here we are having roundtables. So that is like my huge pitch of I came back from vacation with way too much energy and now we're doing this of the day. And then also as an FYI in terms of all of this, you don't know legislators as well as I do. And quite honestly, there's some freshmen that I don't even know well. So I will also be providing some background information of those legislators who have attended or have RSVP'd to attend, so you have that background information as well. So we're doing all of the work. I just need you guys there to tell your story and talk about why this legislation is important to you. I don't know if I can make it any easier than that. And I'll take more questions on that, I think, when we get to the end. And with that, I think I'm going to chip it to John to talk about state update for reopening, and then I'll go through some common questions.
Thank you, Melissa. The roundtable program looks fantastic. It's a lot of work, obviously, on your part and Heidi and everyone at PRLA, but it's really, really important. And legislators will turn out for this, which, so assuming we have a lot of members there, it'll be great. Well, I think we'll get a lot of progress with it, so thank you for that. To give the state update, let me remind you what our strategy has been to try to get, in particular, restaurants open. Of course, hotels, everything is important to us, but hotels have not technically been closed, and actually the hotels in some parts of the state are starting to see a resurgence. Our biggest challenge has been restaurants, in particular with the July 15th standard that took us back to 25%, the July 15 order. So let me remind you what our strategy has been all along, recognizing that the governor ultimately has the ultimate authority to manage a state of emergency, as has been upheld by the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, would not be heard from the US Supreme Court. They refused to hear it. And several pieces of legislation have either been passed or could not get passed. And those that were passed were mostly vetoed, except for our legislation that allowed to-go drinks. So consequently, we've worked throughout the crisis with the governor and his team to try to develop reopening standards that that could be safe and yet sensible and practical and allow restaurants to survive. We felt like the initial package, when we got outdoor dining in yellow, that was very helpful. When we got the initial package of standards done in green, they were balanced and among probably the best in the country. That all changed on July 15th. So our approach changed at that point in time, and we told the governor's office it would have to change because 25% was a mistake. There was no basis in safety for 25%, and we had to take that on and in a big way. So there's really two approaches to it. One was through legislation that Melissa's already outlined, and we have put together, and Melissa in particular has worked really hard to put together a terrific legislative package that would help get restaurants back where they need to be, and at the same time get the support of legislators, and particular importance is Democratic legislators, because they also, to a greater degree, have the ear of the governor, and we needed them lobbying on our behalf as well. Then the second way was in what we call the court of public opinion, by making, by getting in the press a lot, and we've had tracked over 600 million impressions, and it's probably closer to 1 billion since we stopped tracking it last week. And about 200 press articles, all about 25 versus 50%, all favorable. There's no science backing up 25% versus 50%. So we've made it clear that that was the position on it. We had to get restaurants back to 50%. Let me pause for a moment and say there's a few other things that go along with that. One is bar seating is really important, and that's right along with it because most restaurants cannot get to 50% with social distancing unless they're also using bar seating or some other form of seating to be creative, such as the booth dividers, which we were able to get in the first package. So bar seating is important. And the concept of food and beverages having to be served together, we think doesn't make sense. And we think the only reason that came about is because the original regulations, which required you to be seated to be served either a food or beverage, was not enforced. If those had been enforced along with social distancing and face masking, I don't think we'd be talking about this today. That's been our big stance. What's happened with our work with Democrat legislators, all legislators, but in particular Democrat, the legislative packages that Melissa has talked about and the pressure that we put on through the court of public opinion is that we are continuing to talk with the governor's office, and they have a renewed interest in trying to move things forward. So that's part of the strategy. It doesn't mean that we're letting up on our court of public opinion, and I made that very clear with their team that we're not going to let up until we have a commitment to get back to where we need to be. They understand that. Melissa and all of the rest of the team are not going to let up on the legislative relief that we might be able to get until we can get to that point. But there is a continuing dialogue, and that's positive. It's important and it's positive because of the nature of the governor's authority in managing the state of emergency. So that's what's happening in that. I can't really, there's really nothing else I can add to that except for you to understand what the strategy is. Those that say that the governor isn't hearing us aren't really paying attention, because the almost 1 billion impressions on 25 versus 50% would say otherwise. We know he's hearing. So we just have to get to the point where there is the right incentive to move forward to get restaurants back open again. We know that the post-Labor Day slump is going to hurt restaurants. They know that too. They know that the cold weather is going to kill outdoor dining. All of these things are working in our favor in getting something moved more quickly rather than slowly. We continue along that route. Along the same line, and I'll talk briefly about Allegheny County, and I specifically want to cover the partnership that the PRLA formed with the Allegheny County Health Department and Safe Service Pittsburgh last week. Why this is important is because it puts us forefront in understanding that we want to, and the industry wants to provide safe measures for its employees and its guests. There's two aspects to getting restaurants back up and running again. One is getting government regulations out of the way. Number two is gaining the public trust again, because there's no question, and you've seen it in the trends, that people are uncomfortable in many cases in eating indoors. They're choosing outdoor dining. We have to show that we're doing things to keep them safe. And at the same time, by creating partnerships like the one we have with Allegheny County Health Department, we can get back to 50%, and maybe, as Melissa suggested, remove capacity requirements totally, because really it's social distancing and face masking that's important, not necessarily an arbitrary capacity requirement. So what we did is Allegheny County Health Department, which by the way is recognized as one of the best health departments in the country, whether we think so or not, we've had a good partnership with them over the years, highly recognized, as a very progressive approach to try to get restaurants committed to doing the right thing through a sort of a self-certification process. They asked our assistance with that, particularly because of us being the authors of the Pennsylvania Restaurant Promise, something that could be integrated into their program in Allegheny County. And then a group that was already formed called Safe Service Pittsburgh expanded to morph into a group called Safe Service Allegheny to help the county administer the program, which is essentially based on the Pennsylvania Restaurant Promise authored by the PRLA. So it's all good from a standpoint of getting restaurants back to the point where they can get a higher capacity. We think this is another step in that regard. Secondly, showing that we care about the safety of our guests and employees, which we all knew we did, but not necessarily the general public does, and forming a productive relationship with one of the most significant health departments in the state for Allegheny County and Pittsburgh. So that's what's happening on the state update from my perspective and the Allegheny County update. I will say that all of this is, this all works together. The legislative front, getting the support of legislators, and in particular Democrat legislators, getting positive press about the need for the restaurant industry to get back to 50%. And the last thing I'll add on that is that in all of the interviews that Melissa and I do, and I think we've done about 200 of them since July 15th, we're often asked, is there a restaurant that I can talk with? If you would be so kind as to be featured in and tell your story in one of these press reports that we have, it would be really important, because they always like to put a face with a story. It's one thing for us to talk about the stats, which we have a good handle on, the impact on the industry, but it's always great if they have a story and a face behind the story. Lastly, I want to give credit to the PRLA communications team, which is small but mighty, and our partners in Philadelphia who work with us on a statewide basis, Food Shelter PR. They've done a terrific job with the reach on this campaign. Most people have looked at it and can't believe the amount of reach we've had on this, and a lot of it's because of our communications team, and of course, Food Shelter PR. And thanks to Melissa and Steph for handling a lot of the interviews as well, along with Ben and me. So we appreciate that. That's what's happening. And with that, I'll turn it back to Melissa. I'm sure there's a few things I missed that you can ask me to cover if you'd like, Melissa. Otherwise, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, John. That was thorough. I don't have much else to add on the Allegheny County front. John really covered that. There has been no change on Allegheny County as it pertains to the 11 o'clock closing. I think I reiterated this 2 weeks ago, but I'll do it again. 11 o'clock does not mean you can seat at 11 o'clock. It means that you cannot provide service of any kind unless it's takeout after 11 o'clock. So I want to reiterate that for all of you. Allegheny County does a press conference every Wednesday at 4 p.m. So we'll see what they say today. I know counts have been going down in Allegheny County, but we have not gotten a hint that anything's going to change on that front in terms of that. Philadelphia, August 21st is the day we learn our future. And Donnie, I wish I had inside baseball. Dr. Farley said in his press conference yesterday that a decision will be made on indoor dining by August 21st, if not sooner. As a reminder, that would be a beginning date of indoor dining of September 1st. You know how I say I can't get into the governor's head? Dr. Farley is, I don't know how he's doing all he is doing. So I don't want to try and get into his head either on this. I can't predict. In my heart of hearts, do I think that it would be a sign of good faith to allow us to do 25% in Philadelphia? Yes, and I'm yearning for that, but I can't predict it. And I think a lot of it's really going to depend on how those numbers look over the next few days in Philadelphia. He does technically have until Friday before he'll provide an update. Even then, September 1st would be the soonest it would take effect. So I have no inside baseball. I can't predict. This is one I'm not even going to try to. I can just tell you that after 2 delays of indoor dining, I would be hopeful that the needle would move on that. That's just me yearning for that, though. A few other updates on Philadelphia. I've covered this a few times, but I know we're still getting some questions, and they're reasonable questions because this caused a lot of confusion from the get-go. The 10 p.m. closure requirement in Philadelphia is once again only if you've done that temporary extension of your sidewalk cafe or parklet seating as it relates to COVID. So only if you've extended under the emergency order over the past few months. If you have always had your sidewalk cafe before March, if you had outdoor seating before March, if you had any of that, your closing time is the same. So if you were allowed to stay open until 2 a.m., you can stay open until 2 a.m. Remember, you still have to serve food outside, but that 10 p.m. is only for the emergency extension. It's not for anything that was licensed and permissible before the emergency COVID extension happened. So that's why I always say, if you were able to do it before March of this year, whatever you could do before, you can do now. And I know some of you might have agreements with your local business groups that you might have to close at 11 or midnight. All of those would still stand, but the 10 p.m. From the city is only for those newly licensed or extended areas. Another update from Philadelphia. We've had this conversation before. The Department of Health in Philadelphia has stipulated that we didn't find out until a few weeks ago that they believe 50 people is universal. In the past, we've said 50 people for events outdoors, social distancing for restaurants. The city basically said 50 people is the cap no matter what, and that they will look at specific scenarios. If you have a space that can accommodate more than 50 people with social distancing, they will look at that on a case-by-case basis to determine if you can have more than 50 people in your outdoor restaurant space. We continue to work with the city in terms of figuring out what an application for that would look like. Currently, it's basically you reach out to the department and kind of tell them what you're doing and send them some plans, and then they try and check it for you. Our hope is to create a more consistent review of that. But if you do have outdoor space in Philadelphia that has more than 50 people, that allows for more than 50 people, technically that's not permissible. So you do need to get permission from the Department of Health to continue to do that in Philadelphia. And also, I will not speak to other counties that have health departments. Oh, Macy even woke up for that one. Philadelphia, I know, it drives me crazy too. Other health departments around the state might have some different rules as well, but that's the Philadelphia update in and of itself. Some common questions that I've been getting over the past 2 weeks since I've had my last webinar that I just want to touch upon. Must I close if there's a case of COVID? these are the gray areas. I never want to be in a gray area again. We're going to be so black and white when COVID is over. You're all going to hate me. The guidance suggests that you should close for 24 hours and then do a deep clean if you have a confirmed case of COVID within your business. It says if you are able to do so. So technically, could you do a deep clean overnight and reopen the next day? Technically, you could say that you're going to do that, but optically, I think we're seeing, and for those of you that had to go through this, doing a shutdown not only protects your employees and you, but it also makes your customers feel a lot safer that you're doing what you need to do to make sure the space is clean and sanitized for them. So while the guidance in and of itself suggests if you're able to do so to shut down for 24 hours, then do a deep clean, between you and I and the 117 people still on this webinar, it's going to be better for you to do the shutdown and let your customers know that you're going above and beyond. I think we're seeing some people that are not doing that and then just opening the next day and customers find out. There's a backlash there that's not helping anybody. So you don't have to close, but best practice is really going to be to close. And generally the health department is going to suggest you do so as well. Cocktails to go. Just want to clarify that you can't sell them after 11 o'clock at night. So if you're doing mixed drinks to go, cocktails to go, 11 p.m. is your hard cutoff. You can be open until 2 a.m. for takeout if you would like, but you cannot sell drinks to go after 11 p.m. at night. And then also don't forget, if you are still doing mixed drinks to go, you need that transaction scan device as well. So if you haven't gotten that, you need to get it. LC is enforcing that. And then last, but certainly never least, we're hitting a bit of a lull on the petition and I need more signatures on that sucker. So please, 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 if you are a restaurant and you do a newsletter to your customers, please include it. We really need to drive up the responses. I mean, I get everybody loves the Big Ten, but the Big Ten did a letter about the football season being canceled and they've gotten like hundreds of thousands. So I've got a little bit of petition envy. So please, if you have not shared it with your customers, with your employees, please do so. It's really important that we drive up the support of this and get as many people as we can so I can really start proactively using it with legislators to supplement the roundtables that we're doing next week. So I really urge you to do that, and I will. For my Philadelphia friends, for your roundtable, I need you all there and I need your neighbors there because that Philadelphia delegation is going to be key in terms of all of this package of bills that we're moving. So I do want to do that plug to my Philadelphia friends and probably to my Allegheny County friends as well. So please take the time to join that roundtable and invite others to join it as well. And I think with that, we're going to the next slide of upcoming webinars. Does anyone want to cover this one?
Hope you want to take it?
Sure, no problem. So again, we'll be back next week with Melissa for her industry update, but we will also have a follow-up webinar to the insurance claims due to COVID business interruption insurance. We will be having Schmidt Kramer come back with a panel of other attorneys to talk about where these lawsuits stand. And if you have additional questions on how to get involved or what you could be doing with your insurance company, they will be there to answer those questions. We do have Sean Kennedy will be doing a NRA webinar today at 2 p.m. It'll be more in depth of what he, across the whole United States. So if you want to join that, you can go onto our website and register. And they will be doing Highmark will be doing something with behavioral ways. So mental health, and Heartland will also be doing a webinar talking about exploring different ways of doing payment methods in this new world of COVID. And then the next slide, Eric. We just recently put this up on our website, and I'm reaching out to our industry to help our schools in Pennsylvania. A lot of them are going to be delivering curriculum in a virtual space, remote space, and they do need our help as an industry to provide some content to their students. And it's a great way for our industry to connect with these programs because these programs are providing us our workforce at the end of this year or next year. And we want to make sure that these students feel like they're important to our growth as an industry. And so if you're interested in doing anything, please visit the page, and we have a list of different ways you can get involved. I will contact you and put you in touch with the different educators across the state. It's as simple as either recording a demo, or maybe going in as a guest speaker, or talking about your path is a culinarian, or through a hotel, maybe doing a tour of your facility. So there's a variety of different ways that you can help these programs continue to provide good industry connections and experiences to their students. And again, just to reiterate, the different training solutions, the Safe Stay and the Serve Safe Dining Commitment, which are great complements to the Promise, the Restaurant Promise and Hotel Promise. And we are still offering classes. So if you have any questions, and Steph did just put up the URL on the chat feature if you want to connect to it. It's a simple form, just providing your name and contact information for me to reach out to you. Next website, next slide. And I think we are ready for questions if you've had a chance to look them over, Melissa and John.
I think we're ready to rock. Kate welcomed me back from vacation. Thank you, Kate. I am surprisingly happy to be back. I joke, I was with my whole family, so while I love my nieces and my nephew, after a week with them, I was kind of ready to go back to my quiet house. We'll see how long that lasts. Don't tell them I said that. Thank you, Philip, he's been telling Dave Hickornell every week we need help in our industry. Melissa from Bob, do you have a one-page with one line for each act the PRLA is supporting? Yes, and I think I flashed that to all of you. We're going to clean it up. Steph, our communications director, has already emailed me and said she's going to make it pretty. I don't make things pretty. I just put information on a page. So she's going to clean that up, and that will be in the daily update today, we hope. But Steph's also working on all the talking points for the roundtables next week. So it'll be in today or tomorrow. And as I said, that is going to be updated regularly because some of these bills are still being drafted. So as I get bill numbers, we're going to be updating that as we go along. So please make sure you're paying attention to the daily update and making sure you're using the most recent document. And the talking points, of course, will be updated as well. So yes, everything will be sent out in the update. Can you explain a little more on that delivery of beer is legal? I have a few pub and craft beer facilities that this is in their wheelhouse. If a licensee gets a transporter for hire license, they are permitted to deliver beer, so up to 192 ounces of beer. They have to get a transporter for hire license, and they can only do it with beer. It's the same parameters they have to meet when they sell it from the restaurant. To that end, the purchase has to occur at the restaurant premise. So when a customer calls in for their 2 6-packs of Trogs Perpetual IPA, they need to pay for that over the phone. So the transaction has to take place on the licensed premise. And then it can be delivered to them, but you do need that transporter for hire license from the LCB, and that is permissible. Wine and mixed drinks are not permissible. I can talk about the stupid technical reason that is the case another day, but it is a stupid technical reason that you can't deliver wine and mixed drinks, but you can deliver beer. Let's see. We talked that. I see there's an interest for Midwest and Susquehanna. As I said, if we can get something together, it doesn't have to be, some of those regions are really big, but if you have a few counties or you think you can cobble together enough people for a roundtable, Heidi is all about it to set that up. So she's just excited to plan anything at this point, considering we keep on canceling things on her. No, again, you do not have to be a member to participate. I don't care. As long as you are a business owner and impacted by COVID, which is all of you, please join. When we respond for the regional roundtable, can we advise what our angle strength is? I wonder if certain people might have unique angles, like the majority meeting with state legislators, that they can speak to well. We can work through that. I think it's gonna, I've never done Zoom, so Zoom for a legislative roundtable, and I know we've done Zoom meetings with congressional delegations in the past and kept it very structured. So I will come up with a format, and I will be putting out an agenda so you guys can all follow. But I don't want to make it too structured and specific, because then you lose your passion and you lose the energy and emotions that you have behind this. So I want to walk that fine line there for that one. Oh, thank you, Philip. I don't know, I feel like everybody's in a tough spot as it is, but I'm glad we're making it a little less tough for all of you. Heidi did share her email address, so, you know, send her an email if you want to have a round table. You can send her some funny memes as well. My funny memes have dropped off from all of you. Melissa, when you do invite legislators, it would be helpful to know if specific elected officials say they won't participate. We, their local constituents, could then get with them and push them to participate. Yeah, so what I can do is when I send you all the list of this is who's attending, I will also include that this is who was invited. Now, some of them are going to have a valid excuse. I probably wouldn't participate on a Zoom call if I was on vacation, and if I had a reasonable conflict, I wouldn't either. But we can certainly let you know who's going to be participating, because I do want to say there are, for example, some legislators that have a small portion of Philadelphia, but their main district is in Montgomery. I'm not going to invite them to both roundtables. They're going to be invited to the roundtable that the majority of their district is in. So there might be some people that you think should have been invited that they might have been invited to another roundtable in a different area just because of how their district lays. From Susan, Dale, Melissa, John, I'm meeting with Congressman Fitzpatrick today as he is touring one of the St. Luke's hospitals, of which I'm a board member. Thank you for your service. Can you give me a talking point or two? It's hospital business, but I certainly want to chime in regarding my own business. We can send you, Susan, I can send you the blueprint. Congressman Fitzpatrick is the prime one of the sponsors of the Restaurant Act in the House, so he's with us on our issues. But I can send you some information that you can bring up and push him a little bit on that front. Ben shared the petition. I think I spoke to my lack of inside baseball related to indoor dining in Philadelphia. Hopefully, fingers crossed. We'll see. I know we have reviewed this in the past, but some of our local firms are asking if they host fall events and limit the number of attendees to 250 at a time with social distancing outside. Can they have more than 250 attend throughout the day? Example, 250 from 10 to 12, 250 from 1 to 3 for a total of 500 visitors for the day. Yes, as long as they're clearing out at no point in that time. If they're clearing out after noon, 250 people and bringing on another 250 people at 1 o'clock, and you're not letting 50 people stay, so you have 300, that would be fine. It's 250 for a specific event with social distancing. So you could have 6 events over the course of the day, but each event cannot have more than 250 people. FYI, getting mixed answers on outdoor dining times, being told the Philadelphia Health Department wants all businesses to close at 10, regardless of when the permit was issued. Not everyone is on the same page on this. I can look into this, Donnie. Our clarification from them more than once has been, if you got your extension, I think it started in June, was when they started to be allowed. If you did any type of extension from June until now, 10 p.m. is your closing time. If you had anything approved before that time via the normal process of sidewalk cafes and permitting, your hours are what they were before. But if you did extend in June or later, your 10 p.m. does trigger for that one. Steph shared the virtual experience is volunteer form. Thank you, Steph. Is there any further information on how long the $300 additional employment will last and when it is set to start? Sean spoke to this a little bit before. We're looking right now, as we mentioned, the additional assistance from the President Trump's executive order is slated for 5 weeks, but the rule of thumb is that it probably won't last for 5 weeks. In the latest version of the bill, it's looking that 300 might go till the end of the year. But with that being said, we still have the Democrats in the House asking for $600 a week to continue until the end of the year. So we do not have anything firm. And even for if Pennsylvania is opting into President Trump's $300 supplement, we do not know when that is going to start. They're still figuring out all of the details. So I think the hope is that Congress might move something via legislation without having to go through the executive order, because quite honestly, the executive order requires buy-in from the states as well. And a lot of the states, including Pennsylvania, don't have a lot of extra cash or capital to pay into that. So we don't have a clear answer on when that's going to begin, unfortunately. That's a long answer to me saying I don't know, I guess. Thank you, Michael. Michael Leifer, Melissa and staff, thank you so much for what you're doing, and welcome home. It's good to be home. Everybody needs to give a shout out to Steph too, because I sent her, I think, 5 pages of what I want your talking points to be for these roundtables. And we joke that it's Melissa's word vomit. And I just like put everything I want to say in a document, and then Steph makes it pretty. So huge shout out to Steph for taking everything I throw at her and making it legible and understandable for people. Are the talking points general, restaurant specific, or would you have specific points for performance venues and events too? It's a little bit of both, to be honest. I mean, some of these bills, for example, the restaurant grant program is specific to that. But generally, in terms of impact on the industry and loss of jobs and all of that, it's going to be general and inclusive of the entire industry. So some are going to be specific. For example, indoor events for more going to 50% capacity probably isn't that much of an issue for some of my small restaurants, but it is an issue for my hotels and my event venues. So some are going to be specific to one segment, some are going to be all encompassing. A little bit of everything is what I would say. For the roundtable next week, what category of talking points do county political leaders get? I need to get our county folks who started Restore Chester County Task Force engaged too. They're on our side. We will be sharing, Bob, and to everybody else, the legislative, I call them leave behind, but of course we're not leaving them behind, we're emailing them. It's going to be very straightforward. I love all 253 of our elected officials, but they have really short-term memory and ADD. So it's going to be a simple kind of one-pager, maybe front and back if I need more room, that can be shared with everyone. That'll be the document. You share it with the world. I don't care. For your individual talking points, I would just suggest that you keep them for your own use, since they are specific to you. John, yes, John did say that he wants businesses to contact him if they are willing to share their story with media. John, should they reach out to Heidi or Steph or you? How do you want that handled? Oh, did Steph reply already?
Yeah, which
Okay.
probably makes more sense.
Awesome.
Steph will make sure it gets done.
Okay. Oh, and it looks like Sean missed a question from earlier or John didn't ask it. There's a question of opening first restaurant. Will the PA SBA grant help a new business? I would need to look, but my understanding is that if you haven't opened your doors yet, it would not be eligible. If you have opened within the past year or before the grants became active, you would be eligible. I don't believe if you have not opened your doors yet and you have no history of business that you would be eligible for that. But we can send that over to the NRA or to the SBA to see an answer. John, I don't know if you have a better answer there, but that's my understanding, is that you do need some type of business history to get those grants.
My understanding is exactly like yours is. And I'm sorry I missed that earlier.
That's okay.
Yeah, Melissa,
I took it.
it's also,
blame it on Sean.
there's some discretion in their individual bank there also, or they could do a standard SBA loan, which takes a long time to process, but not the PPP loans, as everybody said.
Yep.
Thanks, Keith.
And that's from Keith. So there you go. Thank you, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
Also, John's webinar. John, you cut this to 30 minutes last week. How do I come back and I'm back over an hour?
Because nobody asked me questions. They were afraid I wouldn't give them accurate answers, so they didn't bother to ask.
I'll give it another minute for any other last minute questions. Otherwise, we'll do this again next week, guys.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa. We're glad to have you back, and thank you everybody for joining us today. We have recorded this and we'll send this out to you all via email, and it will be posted on our website. Hope everybody has a good rest of the week and stay safe.
Thanks, Hope. Thanks, Melissa.